behalf of the service today. Well, welcome to week 5 of our Wise Relationship series. I hope that your relationships are continuing to get ever wiser as you apply these things that we are learning to the different relationships that we have. Wise living is our theme for this year, and we are doing our best to learn to live wise. And we're finding out it encompasses living more intentional in every area of our life than we might have originally thought about. Because we want God to bring a change in every aspect of our lives. If we are children of God, that should impact every area of our lives. One of the changes that being a child of God brings is a change in the way that we live in our relationships. And now, certainly, as you've heard me say in the weeks past, that we were all in relationships prior to becoming Christians, most likely. But once we become a Christian, a child of God, that relationship with God begins to change the way that we function in the various relationships that we live in. Because now we realize that every one of these relationships that we have, we are to be living to glorify God in them and through them. And we realize that it is something that we are to be doing as His children. The next relationship that we're going to look at today is the relationship between friend and friend. There are very few blessings as wonderful as a good friend. Can I get an amen? There is something that is just beyond a blessing when you can say, I have a good friend. Maybe you can say, I have a best friend. I have a friend that just gets me, right? I don't have to explain anything to them. We just click. And it is an amazing blessing to have a friend. Friends are different than family members, though they may become as close or maybe even closer than a family members. Friends are different, though, than family members. A friend likes you and is in relationship with you because why? Because they choose to, because they want to. Your mom ain't making them be friendly to you, right? They choose to be your friend. They want to be your friend. They didn't get born into it. They're not compelled to do it because they're your coworker. They choose to be your friend. They love you because they have chosen to. They call you and they spend time with you because they want to. That's a very different relationship than any of the ones that we've talked about up until this point. Friends are people who want to do life with you. Isn't that amazing? There would be somebody who would want to do life with you. It's more amazing for some of you than others, but myself included, right? It is amazing to say, this person wants to do life with me. They want to spend time with me. We share the same interests or desires, and it is an amazing blessing. True friendship is an amazing blessing from the Lord, but it's not without cost, is it? It's not without the cost of time and emotions and energy and even sometimes financial costs when you do special things for your friend. But the relationships that we cherish the most are never without cost. Do you know that? Every relationship that we cherish, it costs us something. And friendship will cost us something as well. As I've said before, getting relationships right is a lot of work, but it is so worth it because God has designed a way to make every relationship we have a blessing in our lives. And it doesn't matter how young or old you are, the truth of having a true friend can change everything for us. It can encourage us. It can help us see us through some of the very difficult and darkest days that we go to. And it's in those days we realize how valuable it is to have a true friend along our sides. Let me begin, though, with a few cautionary notes as we learn to be wise in our friendships, because the world today says a lot of different things about friends, and a lot of them are just not helpful at all. And the first is this: we need to remember that the devil wants to destroy all relationships that honor God in any way. So that includes the relationship between friends. And we will see in our in just a few moments that our friendships Even our friendships in this world are under attack. And they're under attack more than you might have thought of. But I want to share some of those with you today. His attack, that meaning the devil, his attack on our relationships are cleverly disguised and even referred to in friendship terms. But they are nothing of the sort. They are counterfeit friendships. Here are two examples of what counterfeit friendships look like, so we can learn to be wise in our friendships and learn the difference between what's a counterfeit friendship and what would be a real God-honoring friendship. Here's two examples. The first one is this: Facebook. Facebook, in many ways, has ruined the term and the title of friend. They have degraded what it means to be a friend. Now, you may have some true friends who you connect with on Facebook, but all the people who are labeled or titled as your friend on Facebook are not truly your friends. And I would dare to guess that you know that is true. I heard somebody just in this last week say they had 600 friends on Facebook, and I thought, my goodness, how in the world could you have 600 friends? Who has time for that? Because you know what really happens? True friends come in low quantities. Because of the cost, because of the investment of time, emotions, and energy, you can only probably maintain one or two good friends maybe in your lifetime. So Facebook has done us a disservice to say that all these people are our friends. And I hope the sermon today will help you more clearly decipher who is a true friend and who is not a true friend. Just stay with Facebook for just a minute, and I'm not trying to bash them. I just want you to see how much friendships are under attack in our world more than we think that they are. Do you know what the definition of a friend request is if you look it up? Facebook, you send friend requests to people. Do you know what that is defined as? According to the Oxford Learner's Dictionary, it's an invitation to follow somebody's activity on social media. It's just an invitation to follow what I post. It is not an invitation to friendship. Did you know that? It just says, hey, I want you to look at my pictures, and guess what I want you to do? I want you to hit like. Even if you don't, even if you marginally, just hit like, because that's what I need from you. They're not even a true friend. It's not even an invitation to friendship. And what they post may or may not even be true of themselves or of the world around them. An invitation to follow somebody, maybe not even your friend. It just says an invitation to follow somebody's social media stuff. They may not even know that you exist. You ever had somebody wish you happy birthday on your Facebook page? You're like, I don't even know who this person is, right? Oh, it's my second cousin's nephew's uncle coworker. Oh, okay, great. They're your friend? No, I don't know who they are. Friendship is under attack in our world, and it seems friendly in the way it's being degraded, but the reality of friendship is being degraded nonetheless. Let me lay this on you as well. Do you realize that Facebook is a multi-billion with a B, billion-dollar business? It is not a friendship service. Do you know they did not start a friendship service? They founded a business to make money off of people's God-given desires to have and be in friendships. And they cash you out over and over and over again to do nothing else than to make money. God did not give us friendships to be exploited for money. Whether you do that on a Facebook level or whether you do that on a private level, that is not what God gave friendships for. And you need to know that friendship is being degraded in our society over and over again. It actually gets worse than Facebook, and I'm only going to touch on this briefly. Even before Facebook began, there was a new title for friends and a push in the world to be friends with benefits. Defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary, a friend with benefits is a friend with whom one can have casual sexual relations without commitments. That started way back in 1997 is when that term first began to be used. Let's just be friends with benefits. Do I even need to comment on how opposed to God's plan that is, either in friendship or just a relationship in general? My friends, you need to know Friendship is under attack in our world more than we realize it is. And it seems subtle, and it seems fun, and it seems like, well, this might work. But it doesn't, because that's now how God created friendships to be. And you need to know that. My friends, I too often use that word in reference to our congregation, don't I? I say that quite often, my friends. My friends, if we are going to have God-honoring friendships, we need to know what they look like, because they are very different from what the world promotes as friendships. And as I said, God did give us friendships to be an honoring relationship in our lives, one that brings him glory and one that should edify us, right? Just beg on Facebook for just another second. How many of you walk away from Facebook feeling so edified? That's the best 5 hours of my life I just spent. Or do you feel the opposite of that? That itself should be an indication that that does not fall in line with God, what God has desired for our friendships to truly be. Thankfully, we have several examples of godly friendships throughout the Bible. And one of the most helpful ones to examine is the friendship that developed between David and Jonathan. We're going to look at an overview of this friendship today to see what relational principles we can learn so we can apply them to our friendships, our real friendships, the ones that take real work if you want to be real friends, but the ones that can be a real blessing if you'll be willing to invest in the time to choose to do life with another person. This is an overview of what they of their friendship today. Let me give you some quick background on each of these young men. We don't know exactly how old they were, but they were likely in their late teens or early 20s. But at the moment when they met, both of them had already done some amazing things in their lives. And that all happened before they even met. Jonathan, I'll talk about him first. Jonathan actually appears first in Scripture. In 1 Samuel 13, we find Jonathan, the son of King Saul, who King Saul is the first king of Israel. We find Jonathan fighting alongside of his father against the Philistines. Jonathan has several victories, both with his father and then on his own in battle against the Philistines. And he is a well-established and well-respected young, able young leader. And he is in line first to be the next king of Israel. He is the prince. He is the king's son. He's in line to be the next king of Israel. David, on the other hand, is a shepherd-herding, musically gifted son of Jesse. David has already been anointed by Samuel, God's current spiritual leader, as God's chosen one to be the next king of Israel. David has already killed Goliath, and he has already served in Saul's kingdom. And he has served in the kingdom as a musician to Saul. When he gets upset, David plays music for him. All this has already happened before this friendship begins to form. These two young men would appear to be on the course that would put them at odds with one another. One has the family right to be the next king. The other one has been anointed, pre-anointed, if you will, pre-anointed to be the next king of Israel by Samuel, by being chosen by God. It would appear that these two men are on a crash course, collision course, but God has a different plan, and he gifted them with friendship. Scripture records for us the day that David and Jonathan met for the very first time and how their friendship formed. So let's begin the friendship journey there in 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 1 through 4. And it says this: After David had finished talking with Saul, he met Jonathan, the king's son. There was an immediate bond between them, and Jonathan loved David. From that day on, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. And Jonathan made a solemn pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. Jonathan sealed the pact by taking off his robe and giving it to David, together with his tunic, sword, bow, and belt. This is the beginning of their friendship. An unlikely friendship at all costs if you just looked at it on paper. An unlikely friendship between two men who were both in line to be the next king of Israel. Yet an immediate bond formed between them, one of love expressed in friendship. The Hebrew phrase to express this connection of friendship between David and Jonathan has been translated in a lot of different ways. And I'm going to read some of those to us today to help us realize that this is a deep connection that was made between them with the help of God. The New Living Translation, which I just read for you, says they made a solemn pact. But the NIV says this: Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. Another translation says, the soul of Jonathan was bound to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Other translations say the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. However you want to translate this, there was a deep connection between these two people who formed a friendship. There was a deep connection between Jonathan and David. And they were, what do we say, attached at the hip. They were peas in a pod. They were whatever you want to say. They had a deep connection that went beyond just a passing acquaintance or a click of a button. The first relational principle that we can see in this passage is this: God allows a deep connection between two people as a friendship is formed and as love is lived out. Let me speak about this love for just a minute, because this is where the world gets it all wrong and wants to drag in things that isn't here. This love that is lived out is not a sexual love, which is where the world gets this all wrong. And when they want to drag that into friendships, it will do nothing but destroy friendships. Every time. If they say, you want to be my friend, let's do this. No, don't. That will destroy your friendship every time. Guaranteed. This is not a sexual love that has happened here. It's a special type of love. Sex is meant for the marriage relationship. That's where it will build the relationship. Outside of that relationship, it will destroy any relationship you bring that into. So this is not a sexual relationship of love. This is a different expression of love. What we see here is a sacrificial love that is being expressed willingly between friends. Let me remind you again of what sacrificial love looks like, because we've talked about that showing up in every relationship that we're called to serve the Lord in. Sacrificial love is this: it is acting with an overwhelming amount of love with the other person's best interest in mind, so that they can experience and enjoy God's best in their lives. It's an overwhelming expression of love with the other person's best interest in mind, so that they can enjoy and experience God's best in their lives. Jesus himself says this in John 15:13. There is what? No greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. Jesus says that, and guess what? That's what we see Jonathan doing here when he forms a friendship with David. The sacrificial love that we see Jonathan giving to David was a solemn pact that they made, in which Jonathan gave up his robe and weapons to David. There's a lot of significance in that act according to their custom, but let me share with you what he's ultimately doing. Ultimately, Jonathan was laying down his right to become king so that David could. Remember, I told you they both had the right to be the next king of Israel. At their very first meeting, Jonathan says, David, you're the next king. Take off my robe. Take off my belt. I take off my sword. I surrender out of sacrificial love to you my right to the kingdom, my right to be the next king of Israel. That's a pretty deep opening friendship, wouldn't you say? How many of you have had that deep of a connection right off and said, you know what? I choose you And I lay down my rights to be king because however he knew it, he knew that God had David there for a purpose. This is a deep friendship that has formed, a deep friendship that has just begun, but sacrificial love is already being displayed as as Jonathan gives preference to David and is saying to him, "You're the next king." An extreme expression of friendship for a person you just met. Let's see what happens next in their friendship. It's in 1 Samuel chapter 19, verses 1 through 6, and we read this. Saul now urged his servants and his son Jonathan to assassinate David. But Jonathan, because of his strong affection for David, told him what his father was planning. Tomorrow morning, he warned him, you must find a hiding place out in the fields. I'll ask my father to go out there with me, and I'll talk to him about you. Then I'll tell you everything I can find out. The next morning, Jonathan spoke with his father about David, saying many good things about him. The king must not sin against his servant David, Jonathan said. He's never done anything to harm you. He has always helped you in any way he could. Have you forgotten about the time he risked his life to kill the Philistine giant and how the Lord brought great victory to all Israel as a result? You were certainly happy about it then. Why should you murder an innocent man like David? There is no reason for it at all. So Saul listened to Jonathan and vowed, as surely as the Lord lives, David will not be killed. The second relational principle we see in this friendship is this. Friends speak truth and intervene for one another. Friends speak truth and intervene for one another. David's life has been endangered, right? He has just become friends with the king's son. And what's the next thing the king wants to do? Kill him. But not just kill him. There's a very special word that's used. Assassinate, right? You ever had friends that you didn't like of your kids' friends? Don't raise your hand. We shouldn't do that. There's probably people watching. Don't raise your hand on this. Have you ever gone so far to say, you know what? Let's just kill him. But let's not just kill him. He says, let's assassinate him. If you look that word up, it means let's do away with him treacherously. Not just let's have a little accident, or let's just not invite him over anymore, or let's not answer the phone when he calls, or let's unfriend him from Facebook. Saul, Jonathan's dad, wants David killed. Saul knows well what is at stake, and it's the kingdom. That who's going to be the next king? His son has already seconded that to David in an act of friendship. Saul's not happy about that and a million other things. This is a very serious situation. David's life has been endangered. Jonathan warns David of the king's plan to kill him. One of many attempts, if you will read the rest of the story. But Jonathan goes out of his way to do something else. He doesn't just warn David that his life is being threatened. Jonathan goes to the next level and he speaks truth to his father, the king. He intervenes on behalf of David. Now, I'm not sure how well you know history, but not just in the kings of Israel, but in many kings and many kingdoms around the world. If the throne is in question, there are kings throughout history who will not stop at anything to preserve that throne, even if it means wiping out their entire family or their extended family or any threat to the throne. So when David goes before his father and says, listen, Jonathan's got at least two other brothers, but Jonathan's first in the order to be the next king. Jonathan goes before his father and says, Dad, you can't do this. You can't sin in this way and do this to David. It is wrong. Jonathan intervenes. Jonathan is very much putting his life on the line for David. Saul could have easily said, off with his head. I got more sons behind you. You don't want to be king? I don't care. I'll move down the line to the next person. This isn't something Jonathan does lightly. He puts his life on the line for David. His dad, if you read the whole story, his dad's a little unstable to begin with. He could have easily just struck Jonathan down. He doesn't, because God's hand is in all of this. John intervenes on behalf of David. Jonathan is literally putting on his life on the line. But you'll also note what Jonathan does in his appeal. Jonathan appeals to his father's own relationship with the Lord when he says, Dad, you can't sin in this way. This would be murder. You can't do this. And he encourages him to do the right thing and not murder David. Jonathan is trying to keep God in the midst of all of their relationships. Even when two parties are at odds with one another, his dad and his best friend, they are at odds. But Jonathan's there saying, hey, let's keep God in the midst of this. Let's not forget who we are. Dad, you're the first king of Israel. You were the chosen one too. You can't act like this. It's unbecoming of a child of God. So Jonathan speaks truth, and Jonathan intervenes, and he is doing his best to keep God in the midst of all of these relationships. Let's look next to the next event in their friendship and see what happens next. It's found in 1 Samuel chapter 23, verses 15 through 18, and it says this. One day near Horesh, David received news from Saul, news that Saul was on the way to Ziph to search for him and to kill him. Once again, Saul's not letting up. He wants David dead, right? The story of his life. Jonathan went to find David and encourage him to stay strong in his faith in God. Don't be afraid, Jonathan reassured him. My father will never find you. You are going to be the king of Israel, and I will be next to you, as my father Saul is well aware. So the two of them renewed their solemn pact before the Lord. Then Jonathan returned home while David stayed in Horesh. This is the third principle that we see in this friendship, and it's this. Friends encourage each other to remain faithful to God and to fulfilling His will. Friends encourage one another to stay faithful to God and to fulfill His will. David's journey to fulfill God's calling on his life as the next king of Israel has been difficult and a discouraging one. It has been filled with death threats and fighting for his life every step of the way. Yet God has given David a blessing in his friendship with Jonathan. And Jonathan is his true friend and his encourager. And his encourager not only to stay the course, but to stay faithful to God. Because God, Jonathan knows, God's anointed you for this. You are going to be the next king. We have to stay true to what the Lord's will is for your life. And I want to encourage you to be faithful. Do you have friends that are doing that for you? When the days get long and you're like, man, David was just trying to fulfill God's calling in his life, right? But Saul wants to kill him at every turn that he hits. And he has a run for his life over and over and over again. It's not an easy thing sometimes to fulfill God's calling on our lives, whatever that may be. Whether it's to be a mom or a dad or a coworker or whatever. It is challenging. You know what one of the greatest blessings you can have is? It's a friend who encourages you. Friend, stay faithful. Stay faithful to God. Stay faithful to His calling. I was there when you got married. You got to hold on to your marriage vows. Let me encourage you to do that. Friend, the Lord gave you that job. Remember, we prayed for that. You got to stay there and be there for the Lord. Do you have friends that are there to encourage you to continue to do God's will and to continue to be faithful to the things that He has granted to you? Jonathan's faithfulness to God's plan and to David never faltered. That is amazing. You read the entire story of David and Jonathan, and you'll find out the one who never faltered was Jonathan. Jonathan's faith in God's plan and his faithfulness to David never faltered, even though it meant Jonathan would never become king. He chose and cherished the title of friend as greater than the title of king. That is a true friend. When he, at the very beginning, said, I don't need to be called king. I just want to be your friend. And I choose to do that even if that means laying down my right to the kingdom. And all that that means. And I'm sure none of us can comprehend the amount of what that would have meant. But Jonathan willingly gave up king, being called king, to be called the friend of David. That's an amazing thing. And that is an amazing bond in a relationship of friendship. Do you know how many friendships are lost in this world when one friend begins to get a little bit ahead of the other in power or position or money? Do you know a lot of friendships just can't handle that? And they crumble and they fold, and some of them turn into, what do they call them now? Frenemies? Oh, that sounds cute, isn't it? It's a broken friendship where there was probably no friendship to begin with. No true friendship in the God sense. But that's not what wise friends do. Wise friends say, I'm going to be faithful. Be faithful to remind you of what God has called you to do and what God is telling us each to do so that we can fulfill his will in our lives. And if it's God's will that I'm just the friend of the king instead of the king, that's the part I'm willing to play. I'll be the friend of the king. I don't need to be king. I'll count that as a blessing. My friends, Jonathan models perfectly for us what true wise friendships should look like. Wise friends remain faithful to God and their friendships. Let's press on in the story of David and Jonathan's friendship. Due to the limit of our time, I'm only going to give you a brief version of this next section of their lives. Jonathan and David both get married. They both have children, and their lives and their friendship continues on for the years ahead. King Saul continues to war against David and also against the Philistines. And one day, during a battle on Mount Gilboa with the Philistines, Jonathan and his two brothers are killed in battle. And by the end of the day, their father, King Saul, dies as well. You can read about that in 1 Samuel 31. The report of the deaths of King Saul and his sons reaches the town where Jonathan's family was. And in a panic to protect the remaining royal family members, a nurse scoops up Jonathan's 5-year-old son named Mephibosheth, and she runs away with him. But as she runs away, she drops him, and he is crippled for life. You can read about that in 2 Samuel 4:4. David is told of Jonathan's death, and he mourns his loss, and he composes the funeral song for his friend and for King Saul, his father. You can read all about that in 2 Samuel chapter 1. The next thing that happens is exactly what God said would happen. David is anointed the next king of Judah. And then shortly after, he's anointed the king over all of Israel. David's life as a king continues. And then one day, he decides to do something special to honor his friendship with Jonathan. Let's pick up this part of the story in 2 Samuel verse 9. Verses 1 through 13, but I'm only going to read selected portions of it for now. One day David asked, "Is anyone in Saul's family still alive? Anyone to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" "Yes, one of Jonathan's sons is still alive. He is crippled in both feet." So David sent for him and brought him from Machir's home. His name was Mephibosheth. He was Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson. When he came to David, he bowed low to the ground in deep respect. David said, "Greetings, Mephibosheth." Mephibosheth replied, "I am your servant." "Don't be afraid," David said. "I intend to show kindness to you because of my promise to your father Jonathan." I will give you all the property that once belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will eat here with me at the king's table. Skipping on to verse 11. And from that time on, Mephibosheth ate regularly at David's table like one of the king's own sons. The fourth relational principle we see in this: there are enduring blessings from God-honoring friendships. There are enduring blessings from God-honoring friendships. The friendship between David and Jonathan didn't die with Jonathan. David continued to honor the commitment of their friendship to Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth lived in the blessing of his father's friendship for the remainder of his life. That's what true friendships do. Have any of you received the blessing of a friendship that your parents had in some way? Like, oh, we got a deal on this, or we knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody because they were friends of our family. There are blessings that are generational for friendships that honor God. I would dare say that many of us have been the benefit of that in some way or another. You may not have eaten at the king's table, but you might have experienced the blessing of a friendship that your family member had. It's quite a legacy to leave a God-honoring friendship, and it's one that is worthy for us to work hard to do, because it will not only affect our lives, it may well affect the lives of our children and our grandchildren by the way that we live out our friendship and the way that we seek to honor the Lord within these relationships. Jonathan and David model a legacy of friendship that we should model ours after. In our friendships, let us do these four things that we've already talked about this morning. Let us thank God for the deep connection of friendship and another way to live love out. A deep, sacrificial love that would give preference to your friend because you chose to. We should thank God for those if we have those. Second, we need to be the friend that speaks truth and intervenes for one another. The world is getting less and less friendly. There is less and less people who are going to stick up for their friends. Do you know who we need to be? The friends that speak truth, and the friends that show up, the friends that intervene when help is needed, even if it means we need to put our lives on the line to do it. Because that's what friendship requires, real friendship. We need to be those type of people. Speak truth and intervene. The third thing we need to do is encourage one another to remain faithful to God and faithful to His will. Maybe that will change how you act and interact on Facebook. Maybe you should say, instead of liking or disliking or doing whatever, maybe you could just say, man, let me encourage you to be faithful. Remember how God was faithful in this. Remember how God will see you through. Remember, and then you could use that platform for real, lasting friendship. If you're the friend that you need to be as you post your replies to those who are looking and hoping for true friends, not fake friendships. I don't think anybody really goes there to find fake friends. They're going there hoping that they might find a true friend. That could be you if you choose to do that. Then let's live in the enduring blessings from God-honoring friendships. God has given us these things as a great blessing in our lives and in the lives of those to come beyond us. We may not see that full picture. I'm sure Jonathan didn't. But we can be as faithful as David was to that friendship because Jonathan was faithful at the front end. May we be found to be friends like that. Let me close in prayer for us today. Heavenly Father, we thank you today for the blessing and the gift of true friends. Lord, of friends that you knit us together so closely that we don't even have to explain what we mean when we say things. We don't even have to finish our sentences sometimes. They already know what we're saying. Lord, those special friendships are a gift from you. Father, we want to say thank you today for those of us who've experienced those, for those of us who are in those types of friendships. Father, help us not to let those slide. But Lord, help us to be the true friends that they need us to be and we need them to be. Help us to be encouragers to one another, to continue to be faithful to you and faithful to the will that you have for our lives. Lord, may we be those encouraging friends and not the discouraging ones. Father, would you continue to help us to leverage everything in our friendship, Lord, that we would speak truth, that we would speak your truth. Lord, that we would love others enough to speak truth to them and not hide it. And Lord, would you help us to be the kind of people who would intervene when intervention is necessary, even if it means our life is on the line. Father, you have called us to the great calling of friendship, but it's a great blessing as well. Lord, would you continue to help us live our friendships out in such a way that it would leave a legacy for our family that comes behind, for our children and for our grandchildren. Lord, may they live well under the banner of the friendships that you have given to us. And may we be the type of friendships and the type of friends that others would want to honor even when we're past. Father, I thank you today for all that you've done. I thank you for all the relationships that you've given us. They add value to our lives in so many different ways. We praise you for each one. And we pray that you would help us to see them and to value them the way that you'd have us to. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Go in the love of the Father, the grace of the Lord Jesus, and the power of the Holy Spirit. And go be the friend that God has called you to be this week. You are dismissed.